Olivia Smith poised for a big move over in England. According to The Guardian, she's set to move to Arsenal from Liverpool for £1 million, a new world record transfer in women's soccer. Just how big would this be for the Canadian women's national team? And how shocking is it to see, a £1 million transfer finally happen in women's soccer? That would eclipse Naomi Girma.
For Olivia Smith, I'm not surprised that she's the one. I'm not surprised that it's this generation. I'm also not surprised that these records are continually broken by North American players, even though it seems like, the European game has come leaps and bounds. I think the establishment of the U.S. women's national team and the Canadian women's national team, like what they've done to grow the game, you're seeing that they're still very much at the forefront of that. And look, Olivia Smith is a rising superstar. We've been saying that for 3 years. And there were teams in the middle of last season who thought, how did Liverpool get this player? Like, where did this player come from? I think it's incredible that Arsenal are as committed to the women's program as they have been. We've seen a lot of the men's clubs in England actually divest or sell off, and sure, maybe that's because they see potential or are looking to cash in on rewards, but they have kind of separated themselves, whereas Arsenal's really invested in it and want to remain at the top. They are the European champions, and they see Olivia Smith as a key part of staying there and someone that they want to have in their ranks for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, which is pretty special. And she's someone who's absolutely earned it. So I think she's going to step into that role, with flying colors and really fly in that position. It's a lot of pressure, but she really strikes me as someone who can deal with that and put that aside and just plow through and do her thing.
This is a big deal for Olivia Smith, a big deal for Canadian soccer. Obviously, it's monumental to hold a record transfer because those are permanent. Those don't go away. You hold that title as they'll go up. We'll see the first 5 million, I'm sure 10 million, and things will spiral for there. Maybe for better, for worse. We've seen both in the global overall side, especially in the men's game lately. But for Smith, I just love this move because the European champions, a big club, they've identified the best way to strengthen their team is to invest in a young Canadian and pay a significant outlay. And this is a player who's taken a less than conventional path, one that's going to open the doors because the college system, look, I think it's an important, valuable system, especially in terms of getting an education. That last point is key when you look at the likes of Jade Rose and Simi Wujo, who graduated with good degrees from good schools, and full credit to them. But from a soccer standpoint, there's value to these, to hitting the pro ranks as early as possible, as they've been doing in the European game. And there's just something we've noticed with the Americans and Canadians. When you exit at 22, 23, you join pro, you lose key years of your prime, you lose key developmental years. And I love that Smith, at the equivalent of what would have been her 4th year at Penn State, she's now about to play for the European champions on a record transfer. That's massive for her development. And what's key is that opens the door. All of a sudden, there's more value in Canadians. People look like, oh, the records are Canadians. Maybe there's more out there, more Olivia Smith in this untapped football market. And I think that's huge because the U20 team, U20 age group, is going through a bit of a special generation. We saw them win the U20 CONCACAF championships. They're going to hope to have a big World Cup next year, and that could open door for more. We're already starting to see the Olivia Smith effect. So I think just from a non-footballing standpoint, this is a very big deal.
3 big clubs in 3 years, absolutely. At the same time that Jonathan David makes a marquee signing to Juventus, there's definitely more eyeballs on the Canadian pipeline for sure.
And I think we're kind of yet to see Olivia Smith's full potential with the national team as well. Like, she hasn't necessarily had that major role under Casey Stoney just yet because there hasn't been games of consequence under Casey Stoney. But once there's a little bit more of a determined starting lineup, we see what players are really key to Casey Stoney's build. We'll start to see Olivia Smith kind of become that superstar with Canada, which she hasn't quite crested that level yet, even though she's done very well at the club level, both with Sporting and Liverpool. But moving to Arsenal's a different echelon as well. Like, it's the same league, of course, but it's a much higher standard at Arsenal. And it's a club, as Brendan, you say, like, they care. They are willing to invest in the women's game. They see it as, not only a footballing return, but a business return as well. You only have to spend £1 million on bringing a player like Olivia Smith in, who's probably going to help you win more championships and more trophies. And that, business return is quite significant compared to the £1 million you would get from spending that on a men's player. So it makes sense, I think for all parties with her move. But Alex, how does she fit in with this Arsenal team? I know you dove into that for One Soccer.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the tough question, because the good of joining a big club, I always say, is like, training standards, competition. The bad is competition. There's significant options, especially on a team that's just one. You look, it's dizzying. You got Ella Toone, you got Beth Mead, Chloe Kelly has been signed permanently. She's excellent right winger. You got Maria Caldente, who scored 20 goals this year playing as a box crashing number 8. You got some Blackstenius leading the line. There's more. I miss Caitlin Ford as well. Can't forget her. Good news is a lot of them are all between 26 and 30, especially a good chunk of their significant contributors. So I think for Smith, it's going to be about the long game. What's nice is she can play anywhere across the front four. She can play as a 10. She can play as a 9. She can play as a winger. I see her long-term a bit more of a winger still, kind of inside forward. I don't think she has the physical attributes to be the 9. The 10 can work, but I do like the idea of a wide role, because last year, for example, she was very good defensively for Liverpool. Maybe one of the things that flew under the radar, the way she tracked back, the way she added that to her game. And I like out wide she can take players on. It's not as congested, which could sometimes lead to those fouls and injuries she suffered. So for that, I'm looking at that left wing spot. Arsenal are kind of doubled up on the right wing with Mead and Kelly. On the left wing, there's a bit more room for maneuvering, especially they got rid of, granted, she didn't play a whole lot, but Lena Herdig was playing left wing. So I think a rotation role, again, what's nice is she can be eased in. If there's minutes at 10 with an injury, she can play the 10. If there's minutes up front, and then from there, I think the real big play is going to be 26, 27, and that's important from a Canadian perspective because that's a World Cup year. So it's obviously a risk. It always is. It can go one of two ways. We've seen players like Ashley Lawrence, it can go the wrong way, but also there's players that have gone to big clubs and thrived. So let's hope it's the latter. But the fact that Smith was a record transfer at Liverpool, she went to Sporting, I don't think pressure is going to be a problem for her, Brendan.
And does this potentially contradict Casey Stoney's comments as well about, players getting playing time and playing significant minutes at the club level? She was playing fairly significant minutes for Liverpool, of course, but was those comments more maybe targeted at players on the bubble of the roster? I wouldn't necessarily say so, because there are players within that core of the roster that aren't getting minutes at the club level in as significant portions, Brendan.
I mean, look at the way these competitive teams are. Erling Haaland doesn't play 90 minutes a game, but you still regard Erling Haaland as like the perennial starter. And if he misses a few games for rotation or because of balance, we're not talking about him and a lack of minutes. I think it's the same thing. You're not going out to sign a player for a record fee to see if they can fit into the squad. No, you're looking for them to be a key part of the team. And there's maybe different rotation than there would be at another side, like where she came from, Liverpool. But I also think that it's very important in the women's game, particularly with these star players that are young, to have more rotation. So actually, I think that those Casey Stoney comments are specific for other players, and maybe for players who had got minutes in the past for country without necessarily keeping them for club. And it's a check for them to make sure you're earning your club minutes, because you're not entitled to minutes here. There's a couple of players that had pretty big moments for the Olympics that I think at the Olympics that earned quite a few caps since then, who not necessarily have earned them based on their club form. So I felt like that was directed towards others.
Yeah, I would hope so, because I think for me, like, this is a move you should want for young players. Like, this is a young player going to a top club, and she's either going to sink or swim. And I think there's just so much potential that if she swims, and to use that metaphor, this is a player who this is going to become a world-class talent. This is if you're successful at a club like Arsenal, assuming they continue to make deep Champions League runs, maybe they regain that WSL title off Chelsea for the first time in a long time. That's the sort of stuff that puts you in world-class discussions, dare I say, like World 11 Ballon d'Or. That's the caliber. Of course, you could sink and you could end up back at a Liverpool. You could end up back elsewhere. But I'd rather have these young Canadians try that out and push, because that's what it's about at development. Sometimes you need to find, your level. It's tough from a national team perspective, and I understand Stoney. We've seen it with the men's national team. You see a Buchanan make a big move, and maybe it was a bit too big of a step up, and he ends up hurting his national team form. But I think he's a better player for it. And I think no matter what happens, Smith is going to be a better player from this experience, just from the training environment, just from the competition. And I think Canada will benefit down the road. I think for Stoney, I think you want a certain core group of players, especially once you're 25 and up. That's where, I think playing time really comes into it. You're at an age where as soon as you stop playing, your form can dip a lot more drastically, right? With these young players, like you mentioned, Brent, it's also a bit different. So I think that's important to point out, because I know there was obviously some worry from Canadian fans. You see Stoney's comments, you see Smith make a move where she might only play 500 minutes next year, 1,000, depending on how things go. But I don't think that's a bad thing because of the level and the fact they invest in her too. This isn't just one of those stash and grab. Like, I think there's going to be a plan for her. And for Canada, it might suck, because that plan could be 2, 3, 4 years. She's that young, but I think she'll be better for it in the end.
Olivia Smith, though not the only transfer, and a surprise rumor, but a sign that the Olivia Smith effect could be coming to a bit of fruition. 20-year-old forward Florian Jourde, who has represented the Canadian women's national team at the U20 level, is at USC, but is linked to PSG per La Parisienne. Alex, this would be a bit of a surprise move to see a Canadian move to PSG, but it would be a big one as well, right out of college.
Yeah, shades of Jordan Hoytema, right? When she skipped college to go straight to PSG. But I just wanted to highlight this, and I love it because it ties in perfectly to the Olivia Smith discussions of Jourde was a teammate of Smith's on last year's U20 World Cup team. This seems to be a direct impact of Smith's exploits in Europe opening doors for Canadians. And I love that we've already seen this with Geneva Hernandez-Gray going straight to Sporting. It's hard to think Sporting doesn't sign a young Canadian like that if they didn't have that immediate success with Smith. So I love that a club of PSG's caliber is already looking at a young Canadian. They've already had familiarity with Canadians with Hoytema and Lawrence. And hopefully this is a true tangible sign of what that quote unquote Olivia Smith effect looks like.